Hey folks, in this video I want to start discussing the different types of system calls that are possible. So recall first of all the idea of a system call. A system call is basically some piece of functionality that requires a high level of privilege. It's something that maybe can go wrong, right? Something that only the OS should be able to do. Okay, so there are three specific things, right, that are three common patterns, right, when it comes to things, to identifying things that are system calls. The first is resource allocation, right? So system calls tend to look like things like request to use something, right? So I have, fixed amount of memory, I have a fixed number of printers connected, right? Things that deal with resource allocation tend to be system calls because we need to have something that monitors that resource and shares them between different programs, right? So who can do that better, right, than the operating system, right? I don't want to give my programs direct access to a printer because then they'll end up fighting for it. I want to have some intermediate, right? I want to have the operating system that basically controls who gets to use it. The second thing I might look for when trying to identify something as a system call is low-level hardware usage. So before we had this example basically of a system clock, right? System clock is obviously a piece of hardware on your motherboard. When you have low-level pieces of hardware, probably your operating system is going to be the only thing that knows how to talk to it, right? The reason, of course, being is there's so much variety, right? There's a million types of printers, there's a million types of keyboards, there's a million types of motherboards, there's a million types of BIOS, there's a million types of all sorts of things. Do I really want my programs to know all those different million varieties of this device so that I can use it? Probably not. Probably it's better to have some sort of centralized program that takes care of how do I use this thing, right? And provides an easy to use API for it. Well, sounds like the OS, right? So low-level hardware interaction, things that's like, well, there's so many different types of it, right? I don't, there's just so many different types of it. It's something that's super low level, probably something that I want to have the OS take care of. Okay, so that'll be a second thing to look for. The last thing I could look for is maybe things that are potentially dangerous. So for example, stopping a program, right? So do I really want, so should programs in general have the ability to stop another program on your computer? Probably not, because then you can imagine you could write a program that you run it, and all of a sudden it shuts down your firewall, it shuts down your antivirus, and does whatever it wants, right? So that's something that maybe can go wrong, right? That it could basically break your computer. That would be another thing, right, that I maybe want to have as a system call, okay? Because then I can watch it and make sure that something's not doing something it shouldn't be doing, right? So these are the three things you'd look for, right, in trying to identify something as a system call, right? So you look for, is it doing resource allocation, is it dealing with hardware at a low level, or is it looking at potentially dangerous operation? Now for us, we're going to go over some specific types of these system calls. So my list is here. So process control, file management, device management, information maintenance, communication, protection. These are going to be some basic types. Note that this list isn't comprehensive. There's basically calls that could occur, right, that aren't going to be on this list. There's also some calls on this. There's also some things on this list that maybe don't need to be system calls. But this is just trying to give us some ideas of what could occur. All right, so in the next video, we'll start going into each of these in more depth.